when we talk about domestic violence, I'm going to include trafficking because of cases that are tied to abuse, and I can make that distinction because of our case in particular. And I want to dig a little deeper than just the issue of domestic violence. I want to dig a little deeper into the story about trafficking and how we end up in the Philippines. Mine was as a result. My incident was on the surface, but it led me down this trail, and I'm going to take you all the way back to 1999, back to 1985, and I'm going to do that at the very end. But I want to specifically state that that's just the word domestic violence. I'm going to take it a step further. So in these reports, I'm going to go down and the list of things that have been going on just recently about trafficking. Okay, so that no one is confused about this issue. Domestic violence is a form of human trafficking. It is human trafficking. If you can tie it together, you can make the distinction, and I can make that distinction here in this specific case, mine in particular. My ex-husband, who was abused as a little boy, his relative, I want to say his dad, was involved in trafficking. They would leave women in closets. They would go to the Philippines. There was all these other things that you hear about, mail order brides, all of it. And they would bring these people back. And to be honest with you, the level of abuse that went on and the families that were being flown in from the Philippines, I can speak specifically to this. And because there were guns drawn at him, and then of course I was attacked as well. So when I talk about trafficking, it's personal. I didn't obviously assuming that I was just dealing with regular people. There's no possible way you can make that. The threats of hurting me, everything. I had no idea, of course, what we walked into, but I know today, and it took me a long time to get to this point. So we're going to talk about the international connection. In this report, this takes us to the Philippines in the red light district, child prostitution in the Philippines. Now, during this time, I had learned some stories, and we're just going to take you through these reports. The red light district is commonly known as really kind of the pickup joint for these children. These children are obviously led right down into the child prostitution. I've been working on these cases since 1985 because obviously, unfortunately, when you become an investigator, you walk into things, okay? So let's go ahead and go to the report. India, the Office of Deputy Commissioner of Police in Quebec. So this takes us to this report. Now, I couldn't make out the language, but this just shows you an example of where they recruit the families or the people that are going to sell the children. And we're talking about infants. In this case, an infant was sold into trafficking, human trafficking. That is what I guess that's what they're trying to accomplish. And this is how they found the baby. So while these images are graphic, I want to get to the point, and we're going to follow up with a report and the update on Representative Steve Scalise. Obviously, we have always focused on the international problem, but what's going on here locally. And without getting into too much detail, let's go to the report. And this is from Fox News last week at Father's Day, where Newt Gingrich obviously emphasized the point that the political violence that led to the attack on Steve Scalise. We know firsthand when people start shooting representatives, this is no longer just a fake story. A lot of people know it's not a fake story. Personally, I think too many people are too busy criticizing people, but unfortunately, it's because they don't know much about the topic, or in some cases, they want to know, but they're afraid to know. It's like sometimes when the truth comes out, it's always been there. And in this case, Representative Steve Scalise was the one that was in front of this issue, helping bring legislation to make it easier for organizations to rescue children. And in these cases, we'll go into more detail here in a moment, but these rescue missions obviously are way bigger than just social workers. But I do believe, because the light has now been shown, and we'll watch what's going to be in front of us here shortly. in the next couple weeks, especially as I know there's going to be some hearings and testimony for people who want to follow that. Please just give us some time, because it's taken me a long time to get to this point to report this. So my story goes back to 1998. And because I was one of those people, I see a lot of you are investigators, and I started my investigating long before that. I was working for a private investigator, and you could see where people have been in this image, protesters interrupting prayer for Representative Steve Scalise. I got to talk about my case because my case led me to a lot of things. This is the first time I've ever shared it. I need to. It'll really help someone who needs to understand what it is that oftentimes I think is happening with people who are Pizzagate investigators. I was probably long before there was ever a story called Pizzagate. In 1998, I started working for a private investigator to become an apprentice, and I'm just going to leave these images up. And me being the curious person, I decided I would go and try to be covert. I worked in the military, but not to this extent, and I got the rude awakening. I got thrown out. I got pushed out. I got attacked several times, maybe because I looked too obvious. I definitely did not belong in these places. And I recommend people do not go at this alone. And that's why I've been kind of backing away, because I was assaulted in a parking lot in April 1999. And that is the truth of the story. I tried to get our case to the DA. It never went anywhere. And I wasn't ready to discuss this, but where it led me, I don't want to go too much further than that, because then I'd have to reopen some things right now that is not necessary, and it doesn't pertain to this, but it does, and a lot of it does pertain to it. But on a personal level, it's not helpful in this case. Anyway, I want to state this because I know it was about human trafficking, and that's how it led me to 2002. And when I found who I believe my ex-husband probably either was a victim indirectly or he witnessed it. And that was the stories he told me. And of course the problems that come with it. And, you know, I can't say for sure, but I know for a fact that when we would go to these certain homes or certain relatives, it was obvious something was not right. They were putting guns to his head. And of course, I was trying to pull him away just for the mere fact of being that kind of danger. And it all led to the Philippines, okay? Now, do I think directly they were involved? I don't know for sure, but I know there was a severe sexual abuse, severe abuse. And it was very traumatic. I tried to talk to people about it, but a lot of people I don't think would have ever understood what we understand today. I couldn't even understand it, so I wouldn't have been able to articulate it, much less word it the way I am now. But when I first saw the story break, I knew exactly what was going on. I mean, when you know something, you could sense danger everywhere, and that was my experience and has been my experience in 1999. I had to travel all through the United States just to escape, and then, of course, the problems that came onto it. But it led me to this, and this is just my experience, and having met one particular Navy SEAL who literally was on these missions for 20 years. Maybe not specifically what you're seeing today, but definitely the missions where, you know, international human trafficking and things like that was a part of, you know, the bust. And you're seeing it today. So what are we looking at in front of us? When I saw the update with Representative Steve Scalise upgraded, and I see there's some things ahead of us in the hearings this week, it's very promising. Yes, you should be shielded, but when I saw the political violence that stirred up about it, I recognized that a lot of people do feel very threatened for obvious reasons. So it leads me back to the whole story of domestic violence, at least my story, because I could tell the good, bad, and ugly, but that's really the basis of why we discuss domestic violence, because that is, and I believe today will be, a part of this story of domestic violence. I wanted to take a moment to share this because I know that it'll help clear up what I've learned as an apprentice, as an investigator, and what I've learned personally, and how it affects some of us directly or indirectly. I am not even a professional. I can tell you, I knew my guard was up because I have not seen these cases go to court, but this may be a first, and we will follow it. And if you would like to add some comments about the story on human trafficking, whether, you have some insight or just firsthand knowledge, please do so in the description box below. Thank you for listening to our YouTube channel. Please click and subscribe here. Thank you again.